Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a couple minutes.
Tell you that.
Is someone talking to me?
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? I have help today, and my tech support person is here helping to unmute everybody and get their cameras going. So give us just another minute while he finishes doing that. And then as we get started, if you find that you are still muted, just go ahead and raise your hand and he'll be on it. So it's 1 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. Let's see, my screen is already up there. So welcome again to the work group. Thank you so much for being here. Again, we do have members of the public on this call. So please, members of the public, please keep yourself on mute until the end of the meeting, and that includes the use of the chat. Please leave those channels open for our work group members. There will be time at the end of the meeting for any public comment, any comments or questions that you may wish to share. We don't need to do introductions today, but I will go ahead and do a quick roll call just to more of a microphone check than anything else. So go ahead, if I say your name, go ahead and say here. Carrie Adams. Terry yet? How about Tasha Bates?
Here.
All right, thanks, Tasha. Michelle Beavers.
Here.
Thanks, Michelle. Julie. Not yet. Christy Humberger.
Here.
Hey, Christy. Michelle Jarrett.
I'm here.
Hi, Michelle. Jamie Merchant.
I'm here.
Thanks, Jamie. Lori Pick.
I'm here.
Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Jennifer Pippin.
Here.
Thank you. Chris Smith.
Here.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. Ruth Witter. Not yet.
She said no, she said she's muted. So
Okay.
Ruth, I'm wondering if you need to use the link that just was emailed out from Amber versus the one from before. I think that might get you back in properly.
Either should work, but we'll work on it. It's hard to see in the list of names because it keeps jumping around. There's a Seymour at the end of that list. I found you, Ruth. Here, hang on. Okay. Ruth Witter.
Yep. Here.
Awesome. And Amelia had an appointment and I don't think she's going to be able to join us today. I'll go back real quick. Julie.
She's being admitted in.
Okay, Julie's coming, and Terry Adams. I think Terry emailed me right before this and said that she had classroom coverage issues and might not be able to be here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. So again, I know we do this every time, but it's important to review the purpose so that we all know why we're here together. The purpose of us meeting together is because in statute, House Bill 1467 amended section 1006.29 paren 6 to read, the department shall develop an online training program for school librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved in the selection and maintenance of library media and collections or materials maintained on a reading list. This training must assist reviewers in complying with the requirements of section 1006.31 paren 2. The department shall make this training available no later than January 1st, 2023, and then no later than July 1st of 2023, and annually thereafter. Each superintendent must certify that all school librarians and media specialists employed by the district have completed the training program. So that is why we have been gathering. Last week we met and we continued to discuss the last couple bullets from our summary that was in the initial PowerPoint. I don't have too much to say about that today. We do have a lot to cover today. So just real briefly, the first one was about removing books based on physical condition, rate of circulation, things like that. And it was brought up that we had talked about that, I believe, in the first meeting, and that one didn't need any more discussion. But if it does, please let me know. And then the second bullet point was about assisting instructional materials reviewers in complying with the requirements of section 1006.31 paren 2, and that was that materials are accurate, objective, balanced, non-inflammatory, current, free of pornography. We did talk about that bullet point. We have talked about that one quite a bit. And then the second two bullet points, we did not really have much of a chance to talk about. So I just wanted to check in and see if there was anything anyone wanted to add to our discussion today about accurately portraying the ethnic, socioeconomic, cultural, religious, physical, and racial diversity of our society, and that materials may not contain any matter reflecting unfairly upon persons because of their race, color, creed, national origin, ancestry, gender, religion, disability, socioeconomic status, or occupation, or otherwise contradict any of the principles under section 1003.42, section 3, and that's that principles of individual freedom section that we talked about previously. So that was a lot. And again, these two are specifically about, or these three bullets, sorry, are about assisting instructional materials reviewers. So they differ a little bit than what we've talked about previously about the ones pertaining specifically to media specialists. Is there anything to add or clarify on those 2 bullet points?
I was thinking because this is the slides a little bit that Ruth and I were talking about, maybe we just need to include the state statute in that slide to talk about that.
Mhm.
I mean, then there's no, it's not ifs and buts, it's just, this is the state
It
statute.
is what it is.
It is what it is.
Right.
That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone not agree with that? Anything else here?
So for history books, they're going to have reflections of things maybe like that. So, I mean, I would assume that those are not what we're talking about. We're talking about instructional reviewers.
Well, instructional materials reviewers would be reviewing, social studies materials, and all of those same things would apply to history books. So
Yeah.
they would apply, yes.
Yeah, okay. I misread something on there that I thought I'd read wrong. Okay.
Gotcha.
So it would be more like, when assisting your instructional reviewers, here's the state statute that we need to be able to follow, blah, 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 blah. And then you would just go through everything.
I agree with Chris. I think that we definitely need to have the state statutes in there. So this way, if anybody doesn't have the chance to go and look at it while they're doing the training, they have that at their disposal, or they could actually, send it to somebody else if they're working together in a group. So I agree with Chris.
Okay, sounds good. It sounds like we can go ahead and move on then. So our way of work for today, we do have 2 new meetings that have been, and I talked about these last time, this shouldn't be new information. I believe they have been published now as far as the publicly noticed part of this meeting, and that those will be October 18th and October 25th from 1 to 2, so the next 2 Tuesdays. And then over email, I believe we came to the consensus that Thursday, November 3rd works for all of us, I believe, to be face-to-face here in Tallahassee. And we're working on getting the details of, what we're going to need from you as far as the travel. I do know that it will be something that's reimbursed. So whether you choose to rent a car or fly up here, or, and it'll all be reimbursed according to the state travel, requirements and guidelines. So I will be sending you an email with all of that information once I receive it. But I just wanted to give you that piece that you will have to plan your own travel in your hotel, and then it'll be reimbursed at the state rate. So, but again, we'll talk about all of those things coming up.
And kind of a clarification, because I thought the 25th was canceled in place of the Tallahassee face-to-face. So it's not, we still have the 2 and we're face-to-face.
Yes, ma'am. We talked
Okay.
about, instead of doing the 25th virtually, that we would come here, and then it's already the 11th of October. It's just not enough time for anybody. So we ended up moving it to November 3rd. Okay. So previously we have, and you guys have asked to have some legal representation here to talk about our harmful to minor statutes. So I am very happy to have here our legal representation, and let me make sure that we're on the camera here. Oh,
We can
You
see
can't.
you both.
okay. You can?
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we can't see ourselves, so, okay. So I'm gonna put this slide up so I have here Miss Judy Bone, and she is part of our legal team here at DOE. And the slide on the screen is the harmful to minors statute that we've previously talked about. And I'm gonna let Judy take it away.
It's nice to be here to talk to the group. As Amber said, my name is Judy Bone. I'm at the General Counsel's office, and I've been there since 2007. But I must tell you, this is my first time talking about harmful to minors and pornography. So I will give it my best go. that all materials, as you all know, all materials selected for the school libraries must meet 3 criteria, and they must be free of porn and free of materials that are considered harmful under 847.12. They must be suited to student needs and ability to comprehend and appropriate for the grade and age level. Now, if I can, there was a discussion on materials that are harmful to students under 847.12. And if I can, I will point you to maybe the next, if I can, Amber, go to the next slide if you would. Under subsection 5, an adult can't distribute to minors on school property materials described in 3. And now if you go back to 3, and those materials are those that are considered harmful to minors, which include explicit and detailed verbal descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual excitement, sexual conduct, and that is harmful to minors. Those 3 terms, sexual excitement, sexual conduct, and harmful to minors, those 3 terms are defined in the statutes. And if I ask you, Amber, to go to 847.01, sexual excitement is what we would typically think of as a state of sexual arousal. Sexual conduct is what we would typically think of, for the most part, sexual intercourse, masturbation, the lewd exhibition of genitals. And let me just say that those sort of detailed narrative accounts of those things are prohibited if they are harmful to minors. And harmful to minors, it really entails the constitutional standard for obscenity modified for minors or for students under 18. And what must be shown for it to be, for these sort of depictions to be harmful to minors, they must predominantly appeal to prurient interests. Where is that show? Yes, I'm sorry, yeah. Shameful or morbid interests, and they must be patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole, or with respect to what is suitable material for minors. And also, taken as a whole, the material is without serious artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. And so I must point out that that's a rather high bar. Let me just say that the third prong, where you say taken as a whole, you're not looking at individual passages, you're looking at the entire book to see whether or not there is serious artistic, literary, political, or scientific value. So you're not, and I heard last time that some talk about looking at individual passages. I don't know that looking at an individual passage is going to help you reach the criteria for harmful to minors under this statute, because you must look at the material as a whole. And I can also tell you that these 3 standards, that, let me just say generally, they predominantly appeal to a prurient or shameful interest. They're patently offensive under the prevailing standards, and taken as a whole, they lack value. Those are, broadly speaking, the constitutional criteria for what's obscene or pornographic.
Okay. I see that someone has their hand raised, so if you have and this is, again, is for work group members only. If you have a question for Judy, this is your chance. So, who has their, Jennifer, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. And I know across the country and across the state, this has been a huge debate. So my question is, I've read the statutes in and out. We've discussed them at school board meetings here in Indian River County. We've discussed them with the sheriff. And I think that everybody's opinion of harmful to minors is different. and it's not clearly defined. And if you look at books and you say you can't just look at one passage, you have to look at the entire thing, you know, I may say this is acceptable for my child, but somebody else may say it's not acceptable for their child. So how can you have a definition of harmful to minors without it being clearly stated? And what advice can you give us as a work group to be successful in making this recommendation to librarians and media center specialists?
Well, if I can, let me say there's a lot wrapped up in that. So let me see if I can start.
So like, could I give you an example and we could like discuss it? Or, I mean, how could we like be effective with this?
Well, let me tell you some things, what I can help you with and what I can't. Let me just tell you, I don't know that I can tell you whether any particular book is going to meet the standard for pornography or 847. I don't think that I can do that. And I recognize that there is some, let me just say, some subjectivity to the criteria. But some things, let me tell you, what you're looking at, for instance, on the provision dealing with the patently offensive to prevailing standards of the adult community as a whole, you're not looking at what you want for your child. You're not looking at what the most delicate of us want or what the most core of us want. You're looking more broadly than that. You're looking at, let me say, the adult community as a whole. Now, I know that's hard to quantify anyway. The way I think of it is like the reasonable person, that sort of thing. You're not looking at either extreme.
Right. So like if you can't say it at a school board meeting, or if you can't like print it in the newspaper or say it on the radio because it's against the community standard, is that what we're kind of discussing as far as harmful to minors against the community standard?
Well, let me say that I don't know if I can answer that because I don't know exactly what we can do on, I mean, what those standards are for what's on the radio. I just truly, that's outside of any of my area of expertise. But let me just tell you a couple of things. As I said, you're not looking at what you want for your child. It's much broader than that. And I said that you're picking things for libraries and library materials, you know, all the way from, you know, elementary school to, and the statute even tells the media specialists to pick materials for students who are advanced. That's part of their duty too. So I'm just saying there's a broad range. And I also tell you, let me just tell you the other thing to think about is, I know, let me just, quite frankly, everybody's concentrating on this porn and harmful to minors. Quite frankly, y'all, those are crimes. There are other standards that you may need to be looking at a bit more closely that may get people closer to where they wish to be. So is to have a, you know, useful library and not to offend some people. I think that those other standards dealing with suited to student needs and ability to comprehend, as well as appropriate for the grade and age level, may get people closer, other than looking at, is it really pornographic?
Chris Smith, go ahead.
Let me figure out how to take my little hand down. I'm just wondering, for ease of sake, for this specific subject, do we just need to simply put the state statute up and say what the state statute is and not try to define it? Because I think that's where you're going to have, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think that this group's going to be able to come up with a useful solution. We just need to state, this is what the state statute said, and pick the slides that explain this, and that's state statute. That's my suggestion, is we simply include state statute.
That is, let me just say, that's where I think would help everyone. So everyone knows what the actual standards are to meet. What are the decision points that you're going to have to find for a school board or a school district to have a book in the library or to remove a book from the library? So if we quote the statute for them, these are decision points, you know, taken as a whole. Is there any serious literary value as that? Does this predominantly appeal to a shameful or prurient interest? Third, is it patently offensive based upon the prevailing standards and, as a whole. So that is my suggestion. I don't think, let me just say that looking at all the case law, it is sort of case specific. So I don't know doing anything other than quoting what the statute tells us would be helpful.
We talked before about, possibly laying out, statute says, we have to follow this and do this. And then, here are some possible practices or ideas that you may want to consider in your district. That would also be an option. Julie Dashel, go ahead.
She may need to be unmuted. I'm not sure if that's been done for her.
She should be able to, but we'll go ahead and skip to Michelle Beavers.
Okay, so it sounds almost like anything goes at that point. If you're going to say that it doesn't really matter what the passages say, and that we're going to quantify it and say, but everything has literary value or wouldn't be in a book. I feel that we're talking in circles a little bit here, because you have to look at some of these passages to see if it's going to meet the idea of sexually exciting and all the other words we put in the statute. So I think you're missing the point here. You can't just say we have to look at the entire thing, period, so that there is literary value, so that we cannot take anything out of the reach of kids that shouldn't have it.
So if I can, so that's the starting point. Let me just say the starting point is there a narrative description or account of either sexual excitement or sexual conduct? That's the starting point. But that's just the starting point. For you to determine whether or not it's harmful to a minor, all those other decision points are going to have to be looked at. So I'm not saying you don't look at a passage, that's going to be your starting point. But then to determine whether or not it qualifies as harmful to minors under that statute or pornography, you're going to have to look at those other 3 points, which is, does it predominantly appeal to a prurient interest or some sort of shameful and morbid interest? Is it patently offensive based upon the community standards as a whole, as for minors? And also, is it as a whole, does the book material, whatever you have, does it lack serious literary artistic value? So I'm not saying you don't look at those certain passages, because that's almost like how you start the analysis. But that just is the start of the analysis. It is not the analysis.
But I think, like Jennifer was saying, if we can't read it out loud to adults, to me, that would mean that it's against our standards. I mean, would you not agree that if I can't read it out loud, and because it's offensive to
I'm going to say, I don't know what that means, what you can and cannot read out loud. I can tell you what the statute requires.
well, there'll be FCC broadcast restrictions saying that this is not acceptable to read out loud.
Right, agreed. So in Indian River County, again, that's my county, I can only speak for them, and that's what I know, is they said that we are not allowed to read obscene from the podium during public speaking. And that is why we challenged many of our library books, because they are obscene and we are not allowed to read them at the school board meeting because they're deemed obscene, and that goes against their regulations for public comments. So again, I mean, if you look at the definition of sexually explicit conduct, that's including sexual intercourse, genital to genital, oral to genital, anal to genital, whether the person's same or opposite sex, bestiality, masturbation. So that's all of these things that we are discussing. But again, somebody's interpretation of harmful to minors may not be the same as every single person in this group. So I feel that if it is not clearly defined, we're going to continue to have this issue in the country and in the state and with this training because it's up for interpretation.
I feel like the conversation about reading in a public forum to mass people where you don't know their ages, and at like a school board meeting over FCC, you have young children, you have elders, you don't, people aren't choosing to listen to you, whereas a 17-year-old, 16-year-old who is choosing to read a book for their own private reading, I think we need to separate the reading out loud in a public way, because I don't think that those are two, we're not comparing apples to apples there. I've got a little, yes. So I think that's an unfair comparison.
I think we need to know that we as a group are not going to be able to come to a consensus on what, on these issues. And I honestly do think that the best possible way to move forward is to simply put the statute in the training, and then districts can make their own, using the statute and of course following all of those guidelines, they can make their own decisions as far as what, constitutes, what meets the standards of that statute or not. I personally do not see any other way to move forward, and I feel like we have been very stuck on this issue since the beginning, and there are a lot of other things that we need to discuss for this training. So unless somebody has a better idea on how to move forward, I'd like to propose that we move forward at this time.
Could we explore the idea possibly of just simply writing out what it is we're talking about when it comes to age appropriate? If we're going to say that some of this is appropriate, should we at least put a minimum age on some of this of what isn't appropriate? I know some school districts, like in Texas, have spelled out, like, let's say bestiality. Wouldn't be appropriate for anybody, but something
Again,
else.
that's outside of the scope of this committee. And again, that's something that districts can decide if they want to do that. It's not
Okay.
within, it's not within our scope of work.
We are
for
also
this
asked to
meeting.
use peer reviews, and peer reviews do suggested ages. So I think that helps guide our media specialists as well by state statute.
And Amber, I agree with you. I mean, we have the purpose is to create this training, and I think it's really beneficial to hear everybody's thoughts. And we're representing counties from across Florida, which the community as a whole is going to be the community that you're representing. And I think that's really important. I also want to say, Amber, thank you so much for bringing your attorney expertise to this process, because that's something that we've been lacking. We're not attorneys. So bringing that perspective here has been really beneficial. So thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Judy, for being here. She's no longer here. It's back to me. All right. Okay, we are going to move on. And so last week you were given assignments, or you self-selected for certain portions of the training that you wanted to work on. Let's see, we've got half an hour left, so I think it's perfect timing. I wanted to address two of those sections today. And the first one is going to be collection policy development. We're going to start, and so Christy H. and Amelia both independently worked on this section. They both turned in separate slides for this. Amelia is not here. She had an appointment, but we're going to go ahead and start with Christy's slides today. Christy, did you want to share your own slides, or are you okay with me sharing your slides for you?
I am okay with you sharing my slides.
Okay, just tell me when you want me to move on then.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
I'm sure as all of you, we were sort of in the dark, like really now it's sort of the nuts and bolts of how we want this training to look. Is it going to be read to people, interactive? Is there a quiz after each section or whatever else? But I spent the weekend looking at different counties and looking at their collection policies and things like that to get an idea of what we as a group in the state believe. So go ahead and move forward, Amber. So the first thing, and we also have to remember that we have a varied group of people who will be taking this training. Some of them are not certified media specialists yet. They might be paraprofessionals. Some are coming from the education side and becoming media specialists. So I think it's really important that they understand what collection development is. And I bolded one word, well, besides collection development, but it's the collection of a particular library. So it's everybody's, we're all different. So Chris's library needs are going to be different from mine, and that we are serving the needs of library users, and we're using information resources locally as well as those from organizations. So from ALA or anything else. So we're looking at what our students need locally as well as what we might be doing as far as even an SSYRA program. So I thought it was important for our people to understand what collection development is. Next slide. And then this was just something why we are important. And this really goes back to that we need to be a library or a professional who's specialized in improving the library's collection. So we're not just buying books, which how many times have we had people come in, oh, I wish I could read all day and buy books. That's not our job. Our job is to make sure that the people, our users, have what they need in order, particularly in a school library, in order to become critical thinkers and everything else. So this is just why we need to do, and it goes on through, I think, what we're talking about, Amber, from the acquisition of materials and selection through the weeding. And then, of course, this is our beautiful statute. And I did use this with my teams last year when we were talking about it first coming up. And I think it's very important that all stakeholders understand that it is our district school boards that are ultimately responsible for what we are doing within our district. So you can click on to the next slide. And so I broke it down into little digestible bites too. So, you know, it is our school board that has the duty to select and provide adequate instructional materials, that the school board oversees the final process of this, and that materials can be rejected if the public has valid concerns. And this goes both for instructional materials and adoptions, as well as in our district, we do have a very detailed challenge policy now. And then the next slide. So, and then the school board does have the duties and responsibilities for establishing and maintaining a school library media service. And it includes not only our destiny and the books that we have in our libraries themselves, but also if you have electronic books, anything that's on destiny. So they are ultimately, we need to answer to our district school boards. And then, of course, this comes to, and I did, in fact, Chris, you were right. I did put our statute, that is pornography, and we talked about it. I am not a lawyer, so this is the statute, harmful materials. And it is my hope that, and my belief that, you know, we do not want to put anything on our shelves that would cause injury to all of our students, but I have a responsibility to every student in my school and in my district to give them what they need. These last two slides are really sort of a combination. I did look at about 20 different districts. I looked at their school board policies. If you had a media services selection or part on the websites, but the primary objective was, and this is verbatim from like 15 different counties. It's to implement, enrich, and support the educational program of the school. The center shall provide a wide range of materials on all levels of difficulty with diversity of appeal and the representation of different points of view. And then this next slide is what the Media Center should provide. So we know that we need instructional and supplemental materials that enrich and support the curriculum. Materials are going to stimulate the growth in factual knowledge, literary appreciation, ethical standards, a background of information so our students can become critical thinkers and, lead a worthwhile life. Materials on opposing sides of controversial issues so we can develop the practice of that critical analysis. Materials that are representative of religious, ethnic, and cultural groups, and a comprehensive collection appropriate for the users of the Media Center, placing principle above personal opinion and reason above prejudice. So the last two slides really were a combination of about 15 different districts. And then just how do we know what we have in our libraries? What makes a vital collection? What are some questions? And what might be some causes for taking a book off the shelf? So that was just in a nutshell what I had put together. I'm looking forward to see what everybody else put together. And there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but it's a beginning.
That was really very lovely, Christy. Thank you. I appreciate all of the work that you put into it. Christy also sent a document that just included information from, like she said, about 20 different school districts that she looked up to create this. So I really do appreciate all the time and effort you put into this. Work group members, anything, I think this is a great starting point for our training for that piece about collection. And of course, we'll get Amelia's input next week when she's here to explain her slides as well. And we can, kind of put some of those together, I'm sure. Is there anything in the slides that Christy has presented that anywhere where you would like to add something or something, needs clarification? Just comments, any comments?
She made them look very pretty. I didn't do that.
She
But
sure
I
did.
love how gorgeous they look.
I did love that.
Thanks, Chris.
I think that looks really good. Yeah.
And Amber, maybe you can give us more insight into how you feel the state would want this kind of training to go on. Is it left to the districts, or do you think that this is going to be something that they're going to go, like my bloodborne pathogen, where I'm going to be reading for 10 minutes and then take a little quiz? Is there any insight? I think that would help all of us as we are looking at this information.
I agree. And I posed the question, and we haven't reached a consensus yet on how exactly this training is going to look. A lot of that is up to us. I think my idea is to present the training as a PowerPoint deck and then go from there. We can easily turn that into more of an interactive thing, or, add a quiz. I don't really want to add a quiz, but if we need to, if that becomes a requirement, we can do that. That can be done as well, as long as we have, the content is the important part, really. But I do understand that it's helpful to know where you're going when you're starting. So yeah, those are great questions. Anything else to add about Christy's slides about collection?
I think you did a really good job. It looks really good, really good. I nominate you to do the rest of the slides for everybody unless somebody else wants it.
You can have it all.
And it's a part of this. I know you referenced one book, but I know something that I was looking at as well is, Miss Martis's book. So I think knowing that you are exactly right, Christy, that there are so many folks who do not necessarily come from it's from a library, I think it's important to give folks a resource, and to note that we did get this from actual academic school librarian uh, books. So I think I didn't do mine properly, but you'll see that later. But I think noting these official resources, I think, is very helpful for our folks as we do some training.
Well, this is a rough draft for everybody. So, and as far as, how it looks, that may all change. It will have to be on our, DOE slides, which are way more boring than what Christy has put together, unfortunately. So, that's all fine. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next section. We're gonna jump to the next set of slides, which is Michelle Jarrett's, and it's about the consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders. So Michelle, I'm going to let you take it away.
Sure, and I'm going to ask you to forward because I'm on my way to another meeting, so I'm sitting in my car. I just went ahead and mine are very boring. And I actually, as I've thought through it, I do actually have some tweaks that I would even recommend at this point. So I just stated, the requirement of consultation with reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders. So you can move on, Amber. Thank you. And I just separated it into two categories. It looks kind of funky. So I separated it into examples and non-examples. But I actually think I would change that into like recognized reviewing periodicals and then crowdsourced examples. Because I do think that crowdsourced examples can be useful. They're just not what we use or what we consider to be professionally recognized periodicals. So they have a use, especially for background information. It's kind of like what we used to call Wikipedia. Like we used to tell kids, you can use Wikipedia as a jumping point, but it's certainly not something that you should use in your references or on your works cited page. So that's kind of how I'm looking at this. So so I would change that, looking at it now right away, I would change that to, recognized reviewing periodicals and crowdsourced sites. So, our examples are like School Library Journal, Library Connection, Teacher Librarian, and I put down there that those are all published specifically for school librarians. But then other ones are things like Voya, Knowledge Quest, Booklist, and Hornbook. And then our crowdsourced, not our non-examples, but our crowdsourced examples would be things like Library Thing, Goodreads, Booklooks, Amazon, blogs and vlogs, and Common Sense Media, because all of those are crowdsourced by people who read them and then give their personal opinion on what they think is in there. So it's certainly valuable because people are giving their opinions, but it's not a professionally reviewed site. And then the next page, thank you. And then I put in here a quote by Dr. Martis, that when we're looking at sources, that reviews can be found on websites of individuals, professional groups, commercial organizations, and like with any review sources, we have to try to determine the authority and background of the reviewer and whether there are guidelines for the reviewers. So with some, it's always if I'm looking at Follett or Mackin or anything to purchase something, they're in the business to sell things. So if I'm looking at them for their recommended materials, then I'm always going to keep in mind that they're trying to sell something. So if I'm looking at like Mackin's Best Picks, I also know that they're trying to sell books. So always keeping that bias in mind that we're, also trying to teach children. So just quoting that there to keep that in mind. And then the next page just goes to examples and ideas of community stakeholders. So our school advisory council, parent teacher association, faculty, departments, grade level, students, administrators, parents, and your media advisory committee. So some ideas are presenting your list to be ordered to your SAC, PTA, or media advisory before ordering, hosting a preview night for stakeholders before placing your books on the shelf, providing a material suggestion box or a Google or Microsoft form for suggestions, and then being sure to conduct interest inventories with your learners before you do your ordering. So those were just some suggestions. I know there's tons of more examples and ideas that we'll be able to add to this, But that's just kind of what I came up with for this section.
And I think that covered it really well. Anything to add? Or comments, questions for Michelle about that? Okay.
Can I say, the only thing I would suggest is, I noticed a lot of times as I was helping new media specialists, Publishers Weekly comes up an awful lot if they're looking on Amazon or Barnes and Noble reviews. So I would just also put that in the list of resources.
And I could also put, I mean, one thing I didn't add is best of lists. So we can also add a slide for that, you know, and keeping that in mind when we're looking at best of lists, but also knowing where that best of list is coming from. So you not only do you want to look at the best of list, but you have to be sure to know or from where that's coming and what that's a best of list is recommending. So for example, like the Schneider list, if you have to know what the Schneider list is, which is a list of books recommending for, you know, that highlights people with disabilities and things like that. So you want to make sure that you understand the meaning of the list.
I'll just compliment the preview night. Somebody said that in the chat too. I love the idea of the preview night and the wording of before placing books on the shelf. And that would be my preference, just in terms of even number one, to present list to be added to the library collection to that media advisory, just as far as timeline wise.
I think this was done well. I just want to add something. I know you kind of briefly talked about it, but like you said, for like Follett. So what we've seen in our school district is our school district's been buying Follett's top 100 list. Well, what happens is all these authors and publishers go to Follett and then they're pushing out, you know, their books, and children haven't even read these books yet, but Follett goes across the country. So now it's automatically a top 100 book. And as we were doing an analysis of the last 5 years of these books that were purchased by Follett, many of these books were not even checked out by children. They weren't even on like the front shelves and things like that. So definitely, you know, just because it's a top 100 book, we still have to definitely look into it. But I think this was put together well. So thank you.
I think some of those lists that you may be talking about are also subscription services where books get sent. And so one of the things that we need to make sure that we address is how do we swap out if it doesn't meet our collection needs, because it's that even if you are getting a subscription service because I think that's what you're talking about was a subscription service, there should always be a way to opt those books out, and it doesn't negate that we as media specialists still need to go in and look at those reviews, and if they don't meet our collection, we still need to do that. That's one of the things I'm trying to think if you were on at this point with the bindings. I know with Junior Library Guild you can ask for unattached processing, so you can send books back that don't meet your collection needs, and they won't charge you for them. And so we need to make sure that we have some kind of slide in there about subscription services.
Yes, agreed. Love that. Thank you.
I love the idea about spelling out some of the places that you should go for these reviews. That was one of the things that I was concerned about, is where people would go for reviews, and having that spelled out would be helpful to, I think, the librarians, so they would know some really good places to go and have a definite place to pick up those reviews at. Also, what about posting the lists of books that are supposed to be ordered online ahead of time instead of having the stakeholders come review the books after they've been bought?
You mean to list that as an option?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would make more sense, I would think, if a book has a problem that maybe that librarian is not aware of for some reason, that somebody could point it out before it was purchased.
That is an option that some districts could consider for sure.
We could add that under ideas, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And as Caitlin in the chat just mentioned, the list in some districts goes to the school library committee or alternative committee before purchasing anyway. So it is being reviewed by a committee.
And
But I know
ultimately also we have to realize that the principal of the school is responsible for any of the purchases also.
Yep. Okay, well, this has been awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for your work on this, and to everyone else who submitted slides also. So just some really great work, and I'm excited to talk about all of them. Unfortunately, we only have the hour today, so we're going to end today, and next time we will talk more. We'll share more of your work next time, and I will give you a little heads up if we will be sharing your slides so that you can be prepared to talk about them. Let's see. So before we go to public comment, just real quick. Oh, I lost a slide there. Sorry about that. I just wanted to mention again that we will be meeting next week, October 25th, here virtually again. So please, be on the lookout for that invitation. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so that we can move into our public comment portion. And this, again, this is for members of the public. If you would like to be unmuted at this time, go ahead and raise your hand, and then we will call on you as you're unmuted.
Michelle Beavers and Stephanie.
Okay, Michelle, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I'm sorry, my hand was up on accident.
That's what I thought. Stefana Farrell.
Hi, yes. I just wanted to again reiterate that I was appreciative of hearing from your lawyer today and making the point that we have to be very careful about making sure that opinions or ideology do not impact what's available in our libraries, because I, as a parent, do not have representation on this work group. From the parent perspective, I am in favor of more access to information and having individual parents express their concern for their child and not all children. And so I do appreciate having that reiterated today and moving on from the terminology, the focus on terminology. What I will say is I do have concern that because the statutes, not in particular 847.12, I think that is very clear. But because the word pornography is used in educational statutes as well, I want to make sure that our media specialists and our educators, especially as the Florida DOE is looking to incorporate rules that could penalize educators based upon unfair accusations by certain parents, that there is protection for our media specialists who do curate collections that have or may have controversial subject matter discussed. I think that it's really important that those what we saw in the presentation today, what is currently in most school policies that I've looked at, the goals of the media collection, that is really hit home, and that's important for all parents to see as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Stefana. All right, I see Jen Cousins. Go ahead, Jen.
Hey, thank you. I just wanted to say that I urge all of you to very much shy away from the notion that if you can't say it out loud in a school board meeting, then you shouldn't allow teenagers to read it in a book, because that's just ridiculous. As we all know, we don't know who may be in a school board meeting. I know some working parents have had to bring their little ones to the meeting with them just so they could attend, kids who are in the K-3 range that the law is going after. And, the books that are continually attacked by people like Moms for Liberty or the Florida Citizens Alliance are meant for teenagers. not elementary school children. And the books that they are attacking are only found in high school. So I think that we all need to really just remember that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Jen. Would anyone else like to make a public comment at this time? Go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, well, if there is no more public comment, we're going to go ahead and end for today. Work group and public, both thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate all of your different insights, your opinions, your professional experiences. It's all very, very beneficial to the work that we are tasked with doing. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you. We will be talking a little bit over email about what we're going to work on for next week, the slides that we're going to share. And I'll be following up with the details on the travel to Tallahassee for that November 3rd meeting. So I will see you all next week if we don't talk over email before that. So thank you very much.
Yay, I feel good about today. Thank you, Amber.
I'm glad.
Thank you, Amber.
I see training now, so thank
It's coming,
you.
it's coming.
Yes.
We're getting there.
Thank you for having the lawyer on too. That was fabulous. Thank you.
Absolutely. Lisa, I saw you had a comment about will the link be the same? You'll have to look it up in the, you can email me and I'll send it to you, or you can look it up in the Florida Administrative Register, I believe is where it's publicly noticed. But if you can't find it, I can send it to you. All right, bye everybody.